Stan grew up, to say the least, poor.
Came from Donora, Pennsylvania, which is not far from Pittsburgh.
It was a tough country out there. I mean, it's steel country.
The area was dark. Jobs didn't pay much. All that you had to look forward to here was to work into the mills.
In October of 1948, with Musial settled in St. Louis, his native town was under siege. Noxious fumes that ordinarily poured upward from the tall stacks of the smelting factories descended on Donora for 6 straight days, in a weather phenomenon known as inversion.
If you were smoking and you blew the smoke out, it went down instead of going up.
We lived on the 3rd floor of the building, and I mean, I looked out, I could see nothing, not even down to the street.
Some 20 people were killed, thousands of people were ill.
Musial's 58-year-old father, already suffering from lung ailments, died of a stroke 2 months after the environmental disaster known as the Donora smog. Conditions in the city were little better in 1920, when Stan was born, the 5th of 6 children to Slavic parents.
As a young kid, he would have rolled around the grass on the north side near the zinc works. He would have picked up a yellow residue. If you would have gone to the south side, you would have had black soot on you. Vegetation was sparse.
Musial's father and grandfather were among the thousands of Slavic immigrants who came to the Monongahela Valley in search of work. There was more than enough for every member of the family.
His mother would walk her father to the Monongahela River in the morning. Then she would row her father across the river. And then her father would walk 4 miles to the mine where he worked. Then Stan's mother-to-be, then a teenager, would row back across the Monongahela. And in the afternoon, she'd walk back to the Monongahela, row herself across, pick up her father, who'd walked 4 miles from the mine, and row him back across the Monongahela, and they would walk home.
In early 1932, the mill closed in Donora. Virtually everyone was out of work. The unemployment rate in Donora was over 90%. And Stan's family were among the poorest.
They all lived in his grandmother's house, which sat on a hill that yielded enough coal to fire the stove and heat the cramped quarters during long, bitter winters.
We had a shaft 30 foot deep, and we mined it, brought it to this hole, and we had to crank it up with a half barrel, dumped it up on a platform, and carried it up in the shanty.
There were 2 bedrooms, and you had 6 siblings, the mother and father, and at least one of the 2 grandparents, all in a 2-bedroom house. His salvation was athletics, particularly basketball and baseball.
There's a whole culture there around sports, in which sports is an escape. Musial wanted out of the coal mines. He didn't want any of that 90 cents a day work. He wanted to be a baseball player.
And so much was he involved in that, going from one game to another. His friends called him Iron Man.
They called him Donora Greyhound also because he was pretty fast.
He hit a ball out in left center, and I kicked it under the fence and ground rule double. And when I came in, I told him he was pitching, and I said, you know, I beat you out about a triple. He said, how? I said, I kicked it out of the fence. First time up, he put one right between the shoulder blades. He was very competitive, very competitive.
In his Donora High School pitching debut, Stan struck out 17. And when he began hitting for average and power, the Cardinals offered him a minor league contract. Meanwhile, one college held out the promise of a basketball scholarship. The pull between baseball and college tested the Musial family.
His father wanted him to go to Pitt because back in those days, in the 30s, college education was considered really something.
Stan's father did not understand baseball, did not understand why the boy would want to waste his time hitting a ball with a bat. So when it came time for Stan to go play professional ball, his father really didn't want him to go. Stan was so upset he began to cry. And his mother said to his father,
Lukash, why do you come to America?
And the Father said so that I could be free and, live my own life. The mother said, well, why aren't you affording the same privilege to your son? What do you, old man Wilson?
Signed by the Cardinals, Musial, at 17, was sent to pitch for their Class D affiliate in Williamson, West Virginia.
I was a wild, typical left-hander. I walked a lot of guys, but I struck out a lot of guys, too.
He was mediocre at best, and it went through his mind, was he a Major League Baseball player?
His manager at Williamson in 1939 recommended that the club release him. But he went on to Daytona Beach in 1940, again, Class D baseball.
They carried 17 men on the roster. And when you weren't pitching, you were playing someplace else.
One day I was playing the outfield, came in for a shoestring catch, and I landed on my shoulder. And in those days, they didn't send you to the doctor.
From that point on, Stan Musial could barely pitch. And it appeared at this point that his career had come to an end. But this injury was a blessing in disguise.
He was a threat to go the distance every single time he touched the football. Or as one rival coach used to say, Barry Sanders has two speeds,